Well, hello guys, Martin, aka Dolan here. So you've probably noticed that this week's video is not gonna be the usual review video. Actually, we're gonna be doing an actual review, but not in the way which I used to do them before. So you're not gonna get the actual footage, but instead me analyzing the content. And the topic of this week's video is actually what happened during the groups of 2022 Worlds. We're going to be talking about the failure of NA. We're going to be covering the buff which Korea got during week 3. And oh my god, the disappointing way in which Europe actually exited through the group stages of Worlds. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the first topic, which is Group A, the group of death. So what happened here is that first gonna be talking about the two teams that actually fell out and didn't make it to the quarterfinals, which were Cloud9 and Fnatic. So I think for Cloud9, this was expected, right? I mean, yes, they came in as the champions of NA. Yes, they had a super solid performance throughout the playoffs, beating the majority of the teams 3-1. But we have to bear in mind that apart from the strong playoff run, this was not the desired result, but an expected one. So we know that in the last several years, NA has not been the strongest region. There are many reasons behind this statement, and I don't really want to go deeper into exploring the actual problems NA has as an organization, as kind of like a league in itself. But considering the changes that Cloud9 actually made in between spring and summer, coming in on top in NA was actually a surprise in itself and already a great achievement. And considering the context, I mean, the teams that were in that group, it was, I would say, absolutely expected that they went 1-5 in the groups. So they faced EDG, they faced T1. Obviously, they lost to both those teams, and I have to say that the manner in which they lost was, well, kind of bad. They could have put a little bit more fight into those games, but in the end of the day, T1's players and EDG's players were just one, if not two classes above their opponents. I believe that for Cloud9, they should have sticked more towards a more standard compositions like the one which we saw against Fnatic. Obviously, in that particular game, I felt like Fnatic trolled a bit. They played way too aggressively. They were a little bit more eager, especially that Soraka pick coming from Hulisang. I think that this was a terrible, terrible choice into the Lulu. But what I really liked about Cloud9 was that they actually went for something really standard, something solid. They had two frontliners and a hyper carry, and pairing this with a control mage and a support that can actually provide more peel for you, that can actually give you the buffs a hyper carry needs, was the right direction towards winning, and they actually proved it. Well, Fnatic played like shit, and obviously Cloud9, having the better composition, managed to win this one, but unfortunately this was not enough for a DNA representative to actually move forward, and this was the best which we saw. Now, I honestly expect some changes in this roster in the future, probably something along the lines of a swap, which we saw earlier. I'm not really sure. I'm gonna make a separate video about the contracts of the players and going a little bit in depth of what's probably gonna happen. But for now, I feel like if this roster stays for next year, they can actually get better, improve their ceiling, and probably for next year, who knows, we can get a better performance. And I wanted to show you, as you can see behind my screen, the stats from this year's championship, and I particularly want to show you the KDA. So yeah, you see Sven has actually the lowest KDA of out of all the players in this year's World Championship, which is actually, yeah, talking by itself. You can see CFO players all being in the lowest seeds, but like Yeah, the transition was difficult for Sven, especially in the international stage. With regards other Cloud9 players, you can see Fudge not having the best tournament of his life with a KD of 1.54 for top laner, which is actually insanely bad. Blabber and Jensen being on the lowest positions, right? And also things do not get better when you look at kind of like the CS numbers, right? Yeah, probably a little bit higher than the KDA, but still, like overall, Cloud9 was just really bad this tournament. And I'm saying this when I compare their bad performance to the expectations, right? Because in the end of the day, this is NA's first seed, right? So we all expect something better as a major region. But well, this is what we got. So moving forward, the next team which we're gonna be looking at is Fnatic. Now, yeah, we're all disappointed. I know. Believe me, like you can see my headphones, they're Fnatic. All my gear is Fnatic. I'm personally probably a little bit biased towards this team because I felt like out of all the European teams, probably apart from Rogue, which surprised all of us, Fnatic had super solid chances considering the group they were in, right? Because they faced T1, they faced EDG. I really think that T1 and EDG can actually make it all the way to the finals. But apart from that, it was a disappointing ending of Fnatic's run because remember, I want to bring something that actually most of the people forgot. The fact that Fnatic were one game away from being eliminated in the very first round of LEC's playoffs. They were down 2-0 to Excel. They managed to come back, then they managed to beat Misfits, they managed to beat Mad Lions, right? They managed to go all the way to Malmo, right? And qualify for this tournament. Then they went through the play-ins. Yes, they dropped the game to Triple L. Okay, Brazilians, you're actually really decent. But apart from that, they topped their group during play-ins and then came in first week. You beat T1, you actually were super close to beating EDG if it was not for letting Yumi during the pick and ban phase and doing this stupid level 1 strategy, which was absolutely awful, right? You beat Cloud9, so then you're 2-1 and you have all the chances of qualifying, right? Unfortunately, in the end of the day, they had an extremely disappointing second week. I feel like this was mainly because they made a lot of bad draft decisions. They showed a lot of disrespect, as I mentioned earlier, towards the Cloud9 game, like picking Soraka into Lulu and the composition that Cloud9 had was an extremely bad choice. And especially pairing this one with Aphelios in this context, I don't think this was the right decision, and it showed, right? Aphelios as an AD carry is really good, but when you don't play it against Jinx, right? Jinx in itself is a counter to Aphelios because of the range she has, and especially when she has a support which can actually bring her further into her hyper carry style, like Lulu, because Lulu will actually be able to give her the wild growth. Jinx gets better, receives health. Lulu can provide shielding, can provide additional movement speed, additional attack speed to Jinx, and the rockets which she has make the game impossible for Aphelios to play, right? So I feel like the particular Cloud9 game was bad on the side of Fnatic, but then as they moved forward, they didn't manage to properly transfer the advantages they actually got throughout the early game, right? We saw in particular the T1 game, Humanoid absolutely demolished Faker. Like, the Akali versus Sylas matchup went so bad during the early to mid game for Faker that it was like I literally thought that if Humanoid manages to get out of lane, then the game is done, right? Unfortunately, once again, Fnatic didn't manage to convert their leads, right? Humanoid was so far ahead of his opponent. Bot lane went even. Jungle was actually quite good. I was really surprised of how Razork managed to track his opposing jungler and actually have a good idea, if not great idea, of how to counter all the actions which his opponent would do, right? Unfortunately, for Fnatic, they didn't manage to convert the lead. T1 had the superior team fighting. They had the pressure on bot. Top lane didn't go in favor of Wonder, and Humanoid was left alone in a 1 versus 4 situation. As game went on, Faker actually popped off. I think he had one of the best mid to late game performances I've seen. Like, we already know that he's insane, but like, this was just another level. Like, coming back from, I believe he was 0-5 at some point, and just picking kills after kills and helping his team immensely. Just respect for Faker, right? And I think overall for Fnatic, this was really disappointing. As far as I know, all of the players' contracts are gonna be not renewed, but they will be active during the next year. So the only question mark I have is their coach Yamato Cannon. I expect that probably he will re-sign for at least 1 year. And I really want to see this Fnatic roster coming back during 2023 spring, just getting on the next level. We know and we saw that throughout the split and throughout Worlds. At some games they lacked coordination, but obviously the potential was there, right? It was always there. They showed it against T1. They showed some potential against EDG. They beat Cloud9, right? Some of the top teams we have around the world. So I really want to see them, Fnatic, getting some rest, going through what went right, what didn't go right, like analyzing their play, identifying which areas can actually be worked on, right? Work on them, work on those issues, clear the issues, come back in spring and just smash it, go to MSI, crush everyone, have a decent performance against the Koreans and the Chinese teams, and then just probably win Worlds next year. Who knows? Maybe this is just too optimistic. Humanoid, the best performing mid laner, I would say, during the World Championship. This guy absolutely crushed it all the way from play-ins to his last game. This was just absolutely fascinating. Like, I'm just gonna show you quickly the stats for Humanoid. This was actually insane for an EU mid. Like, probably his KDA was not the highest, but I think he actually managed to CS quite well. Look at this. He's the third best CSing mid in terms of gold. He's also in the top. What is this? 2, 6, 7. Okay, quite nice. Like the damage, he's like the second mid laner with the highest damage in his team, right? Second damage per minute. So he really showed his potential, and I'm really excited about the future. I think Humanoid can actually really pop off and help Fnatic get to the next level, the same way he showed this year's World Championship. So looking forward to next year, and hopefully things will get better after this disappointment for all the EU fans this year. Okay, so after we saw what happened in Group A and we discussed a little bit, it's time to move towards Group B and the lowest two seeds, which finished in this group, EG, Evogenesis, and G2. I'm going to start with EG. I think EG outdid themselves. I think this team actually went in this championship without any expectations, having one debuting mid laner, having a sub as an AD carry. Like, you literally have the two most important positions, in my opinion, in League of Legends, and you go in with an absolutely new players, right? Carry joined in the last weekend of the LCS semifinals, right? So he had to play as an emerging sub, which meant that he didn't have that much practice with his team. Jojo Pun first time in the LCS this year, first time going to MSI, getting a little bit of a glimpse of what it feels like to play an international competition, but still his first Worlds appearances. They struggled a little bit during play-ins, but they surprised everyone. They actually made it all the way towards group stage, which nobody thought would happen because we had 5 teams and we all thought that the team that actually not gonna make it this year would be EG, but surprise, surprise, they beat Mad Lions 3-0 in a really convincing manner, and they were here in the group stage. So congrats to EG for this. They managed also to upset G2, which was really, really, really surprising and unfortunate for all you fans. I know we were all really sad. But I feel like the team overall had a decent performance. I'm personally really surprised of Kyrie, who had some really good performances and showings, especially in play-ins. And I actually want to bring the here some of the statistics, right? So you see that in terms of KDA, you have Jojo Pun and Impact actually, and Vulcan as well, being way beyond Kyrie, right? Yeah, probably he's not having the best KDA in terms of players like Gumeyushi, like Peanut, right? He's somewhere in between bottom mid, but still for a player that actually would not have expected in the beginning of the year to be playing Worlds is actually something really surprising in terms of CS. You can also see that, okay, probably here we have like some supports and everything, but still he's like in the top 20 of the best farming players in this tournament, right? In terms of damage, he's also quite high in the rankings, right? In terms of his own standards, if you compare him to players like Knight, like Humanoid, like Gala, Jackilov, who all have previous Worlds appearances, they all have this experience of previously playing on this big international stage. Yes, he played poorly, but in my opinion, this is actually one of the nicest surprises we had in this year's World Championship. I'm also interested to see how Jojo Pion and probably Danny, if he or when he comes back, will develop. I feel like those two players kind of leveled up in terms of the overall level of NA teams, right? So they managed to bring something a little bit new, this new blood, this new drive, this new desire to be the best. And I feel like EG as a team would be really interesting to see how the team develops throughout this off season. I expect, and this is just a bold prediction, that they will stay with the same lineup. They will stay together. I feel like they will improve massively. I already know that they were like probably, if not the best team, one of the best teams in the LCS. But I feel like after this absolute disappointment, which was NA in this year's Worlds, EG can actually prove all the haters wrong next year, improve, get better, probably have a 6-man roster with Kyrie and Danny, and just reach MSI, win Spring, win Summer, and go back to Worlds and try to even get out of groups. So yeah. Now with G2, the situation is on the opposite pole, right? I have the feeling that the majority of EU fans were actually quite disappointed from the performance which G2 showed as an organization. I feel like we all expected a little bit more, especially from Caps. I feel like he really underperformed this year. He didn't use to be, or rather he showed us a level which was not the usual level on which Caps can play, right? And we noticed this when they faced Rogue in the Malmö's finals, right? They got 3-0 there. Yes, it was a really bad experience for the G2 players, but I really thought that they will manage to somehow find the power in themselves, right? Just go over this really bad experience, analyze their mistakes, maybe take a little bit of rest so that they can just take the pressure off and then come into Worlds and just put a really decent fight against JDG, against EG, against like literally all the teams they had to face. But they didn't. And going back to Caps's plays, I have something in my notes. So Caps had the sixth lowest KDA among mids with a 2.13 KDA, and also he was the mid laner with the lowest total damage on this tournament, which is 12.k, and the lowest damage per minute, 416. Um, this is really surprising. Saying this just makes me feel weird because often we see Caps, or we used to see Caps popping off, just going massive. We remember in past years he was just literally carrying his team towards quarterfinals, especially when he was in Fnatic, right? And we all remember the unfortunate loss in 2019 when they were so close to winning Worlds, but yeah, the the FPX team was just better on that day, right? But for Caps to have such a bad performance compared to his own standards is just a massive miss, I would say. But obviously, Caps should not take all the fault. I felt like Flackett also was one of the worst performing players on the team. He actually had the lowest damage among ADCs, which actually shows a lot, right? And I'm saying this because yesterday there was a rumor that Jankos and Flackett are allowed to explore their options outside of G2, which in esports means that they will be leaving the team, right? And this actually surprised me because I felt like Jankos was probably the only guy on G2 to probably try or at least give his best in terms of performance. And for Jankos to leave G2, this actually changes the entire scene because everyone thought that Jankos would stay on G2 until his retirement because he is actually the only standing player together with Caps from this amazing roster from 2019, right? And now with Jankos leaving, this actually opens a lot of possibilities for other EU teams to consider him as a great leader, as an experienced player, as somebody that can lead his team in the right direction, the same way he did in 2019. In terms of Flackett, I'm really interested where he's gonna land. I felt like he had some decent performances, but I think his ceiling is a little bit higher than what he showed. So, yeah, really excited for this off season and where the Spanish guy is gonna land because I feel like the market is getting more competitive and it gets really hard for players to actually enter the LEC or the LCS and even the Tier 2 leagues because of the fact that new players appear every single day and everyone gets better and better in the game. So it really depends on whether he would be able to reach an agreement with a team and, there plays the contract side of things. So yeah, looking forward to the future and how G2 would actually reshape itself after the disappointing performance on Worlds. So after looking at the first two groups, we're going to be looking at Group C. One thing that I'm doing here is that I'm analyzing the teams that didn't make it because later on we're gonna see that we will be discussing a little bit more in depth the upcoming matchups. So today I'm recording this on the 20th of October. Rogue faces JDG. So obviously when I'm kind of going through the matchups, I'm gonna be talking about the teams that actually made it, right? So in Group C, we have TES and GAM that didn't make it. I'm gonna start with TES. I'm absolutely shocked. Like, Yeah, the second seed from China didn't made it to quarterfinals, right? And if TS had made it, then we would have had the situation where all four Korean teams and all four Chinese teams actually made it. The first year, but obviously TS was just the sacrificial lamb. I know this sounds crazy, but I actually did some research, and there has always been one sacrificial lamb from China, right? In 2016, it was JDG. In 2021, it was FPX, and then we also had LNG. In 2020, we had LGD, right? So every year we have one team that simply cannot make it out of the world's group stage. And this year it was obviously Top Esports. I think we had a really poor performance from the Chinese squad. Um, they actually did a little bit better during week 2 compared to week 1, but I feel like they lacked some coordination during team fights. I think they somehow fell apart in this tournament, and I'm probably making the statement because of the fact that the Chinese system of making it to Worlds is really tough, right? So when you compare the best of fives that EU teams had to play with the best of fives Chinese teams had to play in terms of numbers, the difference is massive. Like, Mad Lions made it to the play-ins without winning a single best of five, and for a Chinese team to make it to the LPL finals, they have to play, I believe, at least, if you start from obviously the very first game, like 7 or 8 best of fives. Obviously TS played like 5 or 6. Not really sure, how to check my notes on this one, but still this is huge. And for a team that actually proved itself in the LPO to not make it out in a group which I consider to be quite open, if not free, yes, you had Gam, but this was Gam's first Worlds in 2 years. Yes, Rogue was the best team coming out of the LSC, but still, I felt like TS's level in playoffs was higher than the one which Rogue showed. And to lose games, especially to DRX, was also surprising, even though DRX is quite good this year. But anyway, really surprising. Didn't expect it. I also think Wayward actually played an insanely bad World Championship. Like, this guy is probably one of the worst top laners this tournament, and I feel really sad for Knight actually, because I felt like, and even the numbers show it, that he actually played a super decent Worlds. Like, you can see from here that he's actually the player with the highest damage dealt with 22.4k. I feel like his damage per minute is also insanely high, like above 700 is just insanely nice. In terms of KDA, he's also in the top 6, so this actually shows how good Knight is and how well he played this year, but it was simply not enough. He didn't get enough help from his teammates, which made the TES situation quite unfortunate and even desperate for Knight, if you ask me. For GAM, the other team, as I said, first Worlds appearance after COVID. I didn't have any high expectations for them. They had a super banger game against TES. For the love of God, if you are looking to watch a game from this year's World Championship, just go and watch GAM versus TES. This was an absolute banger and an absolute throw on the side of TES. Like, they literally wasted such a big gold lead, and yeah, it was just a really sad game for the Chinese squad, but a really fun game for the viewer to watch. Yep, GAM got a really interesting comeback, but still, they were not on the top level. They were actually far away from being on the top level. We'll see them next year. Levy showed massively for this team. He was actually the one-man army for GAM, but obviously it was not enough. So finally, we have Group D, the two teams that didn't qualify for the quarters: Flying Ulsters and 100 Thieves. Now the discussion, I'm gonna mix both teams in this discussion because I feel like they were quite similar. It was an expected finish for both teams, being on the lowest seeds from their respective groups. Seemingly both teams were kind of far away in terms of level from their opponents. I felt like the Chinese team, RNG, was just better. Also, Genji were obviously on another level, right? So I didn't have any high expectations for both the Ulsters and the Thieves. I think that one positive note for the Ulsters was that they managed to play aggressively and they did not give up when things were not going their way. I feel like even though they were one of the worst performing teams in terms of stats, so let me just show this to you. Like we can see from KDA, you have all the players of the Flying Ulsters being on the bottom. Things are not getting better when you actually look at the other stats, right? You see damage again. Some of the players being on the lowest positions, damage per minute, same thing. At least they tried, you know, and I feel like this is one of the best things for a team that comes out of a smaller region, to go in, play aggressively, try their best. Yes, it didn't go their way, but still decent showing considering their level. For 100 Thieves on the other side, this was definitely their last tournament with the same roster. I think we're gonna see a lot of changes coming into the off season. We already saw that the general manager Papa Smithy left the organization, and the explanation for this was that his idea for the development of the organization was not the same as the one of the general managers or the shareholders. So I also expect some changes. Probably someday is gonna leave the team. Probably Huhi, the other members. I think the only person that is something along the lines of 70 to 90% possibility to stay is Abadage, but we will see. Obviously, he can be the very first one to leave the ship, but for sure 100 Thieves are gonna make a lot of changes this year, and it will be interesting to see how the new project would actually develop, because I feel like in the last couple of years they have been one of the most improved teams, and not only on LCS level but also outside of LCS. They build super solid teams and they manage to actually move players from amateur level to professional level, and obviously into semi-professional level as well. So yeah, looking forward to the rebuilding of 100 Thieves and what they're gonna bring to the table. Okay guys, so for the second part of this video, I'm actually gonna discuss every upcoming match. So we're already jumping into the quarterfinals. I'm gonna make some predictions. We're gonna analyze some of the matchups, how I think they're gonna go, where are the strong and the weak sides of each team. And we're starting off obviously with the match that is gonna happen today. I'm gonna say once again that I'm recording this on the 20th of October. So today Rogue is facing JDG. So I changed the recording so you can see my screen. I actually have some notes and I'm gonna share them with you. So the very first one is to see what is Rogue's performance so far. So they finished second in their group. Only DRX were above them, and I felt like DRX actually had excuse me, oh yeah, yeah, DRX had a really nice performance. In terms of KDA, 3.984 for the team overall. Damage overall was 64,000, nearly 65,000. Damage per minute 415.8, and CS per minute 6.346, right? Obviously, when you compare those numbers to some of the numbers other teams have, for example, like the numbers JDG has, right? You can see 4.6, 77.5 in terms of damage. Like damage per minute is nearly with 100 points higher. CS per minute is better, right? You say it is doomed. And what I'm gonna say is that the situation looks bad for Rogue. They didn't have their best performance during week 2. I would say this was partly because of the EU curse, EU in week 2 of 2022 World Championship. Yeah, really bad. But apart from that, I felt like they underperformed. They made a lot of mistakes. They didn't show the face which they had during week 1, where they went 3-0. And I feel like the potential is there. I feel like Rogue can actually match and outperform JDG, right? But there are several things which have to happen. So the very first one is that they have to play for bot. Like comp is actually popping off. Invest in comp. You have a really great AD carry, and you can see he is the second best farming AD carry in the tournament with 10.1 CS per minute. He's also the second ADC in total gold. Like this guy can actually win you the game. Give him Lucian, give him a strong AD carry on bot. Play for him. Like put the attention towards the bot. Play for him. Give him some space. He will carry. He is ready. Now, second thing, Trimby. Please, for the love of God, I pray to all of the League of Legends gods, do not play NASA support. Like, I know this is a pocket pick, but it didn't work. Like, he played it against Heimerdinger. Like, props to DRX for bringing this. This was absolutely another pick, right? But still, don't play it. Please, 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 please. It's really bad, right? Don't play Nasus. I mean, Heimerdinger is obviously good, right? The reason why Nasus is not that good is the fact that you have to rely on his poke, which is his E, right? So it's AP based, and against a champion that can outpoke you with towers, and considering that you're Nasus and you want to go in, right, using your ultimate, probably getting some stacks, right, using the poke from the E, it will not work well. Probably it can work against some melee supports, right? I would argue that it's really situational, right? And even probably against engaged supports will not go that well. But for the love of God, don't play it. Now, play something, play comfort. Like, play something that you can match the opposing support. Play something like, I don't know, Rakan, right? You played it. Like literally Trimby played 6 different champions in 7 games, right? So he has the potential, but compared to, for example, his opposing support, there is a slight change, like not change, but they play opposing styles, right? Trimby is the kind of guy that will play support, more of a he will play enchanter supports, right? So probably, I don't know, Nami, Janna if you want, right? Soraka even, like his Soraka is really good. So play comfort. Try to match missing. If you want to go for engaged supports, go for engaged supports. Like we see that Leona is quite good in the current meta. Nautilus is good. You can even play Alistair, right? So just go for comfort. Play together with Trimby. Put Otto on tanks. Like, this guy is really good on tanks. Like, give him Warren. Give him Maokai. Give him maybe even Aatrox. Like, this guy can play everything, but Aatrox only because the pick is just broken. Like, Aatrox is absolutely broken. So if you manage to first pick Aatrox, okay, then play for Otto. But apart from that, if you consider my previous advice to play for bot, just put Otto on a heavy tank. He'll be able to actually sustain the pressure coming in from 369, which is currently the best performing top laner in my opinion on at this tournament. 369 is an aggressive top laner. Like, he'll play the cannons, he'll play the Jaces, he'll play the Fioras, right? So just match this aggression with something that can actually sustain, right? Maokai. Just play Maokai, right? Healing, tanky, you provide CC. Great pick. Put auto on tanks. Allow him to sustain all the pressure and then help his team. For Morlang, give Morlang Jarvan 4 or another bruiser or tank. So the idea for Morlang is that he needs a bruiser to be able to actually make plays around the map, but also to neutralize the opposing jungler. Like Hope is really, really good. Like he will pressure you, he will play the Graveses, he will play the Lee Sins, right? He will always be there looking for a play on the map, and you need to match those plays, right? So when, for example, Hope is ganking Odoamne, excuse me, you have to be there. You have to engage with the Jarvan 4 or the Sejuani, right? You have to neutralize this. You have to neutralize the ganks that are gonna come to bot lane, right? So put Morlang on an active bruiser tank type jungler so that he can do all of this, right? And allow his lanes to pop off. Finally, for Larson, control mages. Nothing difficult. Give him Azir. Give him some other control mage, probably like Victor or like Oriana if you can, right? I think for the mid lane matchup, both mid laners, Yagao and Warson, will be more farm oriented, so I don't think we're gonna have a lot of action there. So if you allow for Larson to farm more, I feel like he can match Yagao and he can kind of like go even with him and then have a higher impact in the team fights, right? Because I feel like both teams don't rely heavily on their mid laners during the early stages of the game. I feel like Yagao and Warson are the type of guys that will actually carry more towards the team fight stage, more towards the later mid to late game stages of the game. And yeah, you can see from my notes that I said that Yagao actually has a higher ceiling in terms of what he showed this year. Yes, he had a decent performance, but I feel like this is far from his absolute best performance. And I feel like currently he's in the middle of the rankings, but if he can prove to everyone what he actually can, I feel like he would definitely go higher and probably be one of, if not the best mid laner in this tournament. I already commented on 369, the best performing top laner, fourth in KDA, second in total damage, first in gold. I expect JDG to be investing in him, so we'll see how Rogue would actually neutralize this process. And yeah, aggressiveness, fast pace, and acceleration are the three things which we can expect from JDG this series. My prediction for this series is 3-1 for JDG. I think they are the better team, and I feel like Rogue simply would not be able to show their full potential. Probably if Rogue plays decently, this will be 3-2 for Rogue. I really hope so, but my actual prediction will be 3-1 to JDG. So let's hope for the best. Okay, the second match and the one for which I'm most hyped about is T1 versus RNG. Like literally there's so much hype behind this matchup because history repeats itself, right? You can see it from my notes. It's RNG against T1 once again. Now, they faced each other in the 2013 World Championship Finals. Unfortunately, RNG got 3-0 there. They actually met a little bit earlier in that same tournament. Yeah, it didn't go in the way of RNG. Then 2016 quarterfinals, T1 once again having the upper edge on RNG, going 3-2 in that series and managing to kind of beat RNG and not allow them to go further into the tournament. Then once again 2017 semifinals, it's once again the two teams playing against each other, T1 coming on top in this one as well. And the last time this happened was in 2019 groups, once again T1 having the upper edge. Now T1 has never lost a best of 5 against RNG. And I think this trend will not end this year. So why am I saying this? Because there are 3 key matchups which we have to consider. The very first one is Gumayusi versus Gala. Gumayusi is absolutely insane. Like, this guy is having the performance of a lifetime. Like, look at the numbers, guys. He has an 18.25 KDA. He has a 10.08 CS per minute. This is the guy with the highest gold per minute. This is the guy with the highest total, with the highest damage per minute. Like, he's literally first in nearly every single ranking among the ADCs, right? On the other side, we have Gala. We know Gala is one of the best performing members of RNG. He is, as you can see, the second person just behind Gumayusi in terms of KDA. His CS per minute is really solid enough to match Gumayusi, right? Probably he's not the person with the highest gold per minute, so he's not getting the maximum amount of resources he can get. But look at his damage. Like, he dealt 20.8k damage, total damage, which is the highest for every, which is the highest among every AD carry on this tournament. Like, Gala can pop off, and we have seen him previously popping off, going absolutely crazy, and like, this guy can get the pentakills. This guy can go for the most aggressive plays you didn't even imagine could have been possible, right? So this is the matchup to be looking at, right? The 2 titans, like Gumayusi coming in is kind of like the still unexperienced looking to prove himself on the international stage AD carry, and on the other side, Gala, this massive damage machine that he is, right? Looking to finally get the win over T1. So it will be really interesting, but while the numbers talk about themselves, we have to look at the obvious legends in those 2 teams. And the next matchup is Faker against Yahoo, right? Both guys have really similar champion pools. When you look at the statistics, they actually played the same champions. I actually have them over here for you, right? So you can see that Faker played 4 different champions. The same goes actually for Yahoo, who also had 4. You can see that they match in terms of the Alessandra. They also played Akali as well, right? Silas for Faker and Ari for Yahoo, but obviously those are kind of like the same picks. So this matchup will be really, really, really important of how, in terms of how the game will develop, especially in the mid game, because I feel like they are players that can probably go even or even lose the early game, but their transition towards the mid game, and especially this important transition from mid to late game, is where they strive, right? I already mentioned earlier, Faker, the absolute beast. Like, still, this performance which he had against Humanoid and being so far behind and not giving up, coming back into the game and having such an influence was massive, right? Yahoo, obviously, again, one of the most impactful players the LPL has, right? So it will be really interesting to see how they both manage to neutralize one another, because the focus will not be solely on them but also on the junglers. You know how Owner can actually pressure RNG, whether Faker can somehow neutralize Yahoo and go and support his jungler in dominating around the map, right? I'm expecting control mages. I don't think we're gonna see something that explosive. I think they will be looking to just farm, control the lane, and from there move to other lanes, right? This has been the style Faker went for in the last World Championship, and we have seen this throughout the last couple of years coming in from Faker. Yahoo also in the LPL, probably a little bit more explosive, but we'll see if both mid laners can actually shake things up and bring something unexpected. So the final matchup which we have for this series is Zeus versus Breed. I feel like the top matchup would also be important because, as I mentioned earlier, both mid laners will be trying to roam around the map, help their bot laners or top laners. So you can see from the stats that Zeus is having a really good performance in terms of dealing damage. Like, he has been the top laner with the highest damage with 453 damage per minute, and also in terms of total damage and damage per minute. Excuse me, I made a mistake. So Zeus is the mid lane, is the top laner with the highest gold per minute, the highest damage overall, and the highest damage per minute. While Breed is also there in the rankings, but in a different way. You can see that he's a really solid KDA player. He has a really nice farming skills, like his CS per minute is obviously the highest one for any top laner in this tournament. So will be really interesting to see how their champion pools also match, because let me show you also on the graphic here among top laners. Yes, you can see that 369 is obviously on top, but also Zeus is there as well. Like, you can see Breed Zeus being close to each other in terms of KDA. You can see the CS per minute, Breed leading the charge, but Zeus is also there. You can see gold per minute, both top laners being really close to each other. And now the difference comes from the champion pool. However, we have to mention that both players actually play aggressive champions. You can see the Fioras are there. You can see Jax is there, GP, Jace, Yone, right? Those are only aggressive champions that can actually be abused on both sides. I feel like I would give the advantage over to Breed in this case because of the fact that he showed the Sejuani performance, and I feel like he can be able to somehow neutralize the pressure coming in from Zeus. But don't forget that Zeus is one of the best top laners in this tournament, an aggressive top laner that always gonna be looking to kill you in lane and just transition from there, right? And obviously from stats we saw that T1 is actually playing for the top laner, so it will be interesting how this matchup goes and whether the mid laners can actually support the top laner into exploiting the advantages and just moving the game further, accelerating the game. And yeah, my overall prediction for this one, it will be 3-2 for T1. I think that T1 have the advantage in this matchup. I feel like Faker will be able to pop off in terms of controlling the lane, being able to actually open the map for his team. Gumayushi would probably neutralize Galar or the other way around, but I feel like with the support of Faker and the edge he will have in mid, they would be able to actually find advantages, find kills, and from there just run over, right? T1 would be also able to play for top lane, again because of the pressure which Faker would probably create or absorb, right? So T1 have more options in my opinion. I feel like they have the edge in mid, and this will be crucial for the 2v2s, for the 3v3s, right? So it will go all the way to Silver Scrapes, but in the end it will be T1 coming in on top. So the third matchup which we have is Genji versus Dolan Kia, a whole and only Korean matchup. Really excited for this one. We saw this audio in the LCK. Now, several important points. I feel like the jungle matchup is quite important because of the fact that both junglers, Canyon and Peanut, are actually topping the charts in their respective roles. Peanut is just going nuts. Like, this guy clearly wants to prove himself once again, being back on the international stage. This one with Genji, finally Genji managing to win the so desired title in the LCK, 3-0 T1 in the finals. Peanut with a super solid performance. Chovy finally there winning his first title after so long, after the Griffin era. So what I want to see in this matchup is to put Peanut on an aggressive jungler. Go for the Lee Sin, right? Go for the Graves. Go for something that he can have playmaking on, right? Go for the plays. Put the pressure on Dolan Kia and just open the map, and from there show why Chovy is considered the best mid laner at this tournament. Like, let me show you his stats. Like, I had this guy in my predictions as going as one of the best players in terms of KDA, but look at this. So his KDA is obviously the highest among mid laners. Obviously, you can see Showmaker is following him. In terms of farming, Chovy once again a farming beast. In terms of gold per minute, once again Chovy. In terms of damage, yes, probably he fell to 6th place here, right? But okay, you know you cannot top all charts, but still top 4, top 6 is extremely decent. What can I say? Chovy is a beast, right? The Church of Chovy. We're expecting big things coming in from Genji's mid laner. So it will be super interesting how Showmaker can actually, or whether Showmaker can match him, because you can see the stats. I actually put the stats here for you. Showmaker 2nd, 8th, 4th, 3rd, you know, and Chovy consistently first, 3rd, 4th, but still top 4, top 5. Obviously, probably I'm a little bit more biased for Genji because I feel like Genji are gonna 3-1 Damwon Kia. I feel like Damwon Kia will probably take the first game, and from there Genji will come back. And the reason for this will be Canyon. I feel like Canyon is probably the best performing jungler outside of Peanut, and you can also see this one from the stats. You know, I really love using stats because I feel like stats show you and give you a really decent picture of how the guys are performing. So you can see here we have Peanut on top, obviously Canyon following in the top 6, 7 rather. Once again, in terms of CS, obviously Konami and Levi on top, focusing on the more farming junglers, but this is natural. Canyon, in terms of damage, really solid, the 2nd highest damage dealt, 2nd highest damage per minute. Insane guy. Will be interesting to see how he matches with Peanut. And as I said, I think it's gonna be a 3-1 for Genji. And now to quickly finalize this video, I'm gonna also quickly discuss DRX versus EDG. This is where the big upset will happen. I feel like most of the people were expecting EDG to actually win this, and obviously this is because last year they won the World Championship. They showed some really good performances against T1 and Fnatic in the group stage. Yes, they finished 2nd, but I still felt like they haven't reached their full potential. But I believe in DRX. I think that they will manage to slow the game down, and I just cannot believe that this will be Deft's last dance. I refuse to believe this. I think that he will be able to get the edge against his former team. He played for EDG back in the days. He's actually known as EDG Deft, you know. So I feel like this will be a competitive series, but I think it will go 3-0 in favor, 3-2, excuse me, in favor of DRX. Yes, EDG looks solid, but DRX definitely improved a lot more during the last week. And yeah, I think we'll see 3 teams moving, 3 Korean teams moving on to the semifinals together with LGD. And I feel like LGD will have to prove everyone that China is the superior region, but obviously we have to prove why China is the superior region, but obviously we'll see how the matchups will go. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this whole video. I know it got a little bit longer, but I want to experiment a little bit with all these videos to see whether I like how they go, to just talk to you guys about my predictions, how I see the games, how I analyze, because this is also a big learning experience for me. So thank you so much for watching. Expect more videos like this in the future. Leave a comment expressing what you think, whether you liked it, whether you didn't like it, why you didn't like it. Just give me the feedback I need, and I see you next one. It was Martin aka Dolan, and I'm out.